Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 372, and today's guest is Florian Hillen, CEO and founder of VideaHealth. It goes without saying that AI is going to transform pretty much every industry, but I think there is such a unique opportunity in healthcare as the benefits are hopefully going to be extraordinary. The tricky thing, however, about building a company in healthcare is that it's heavily regulated. So that means you need to get FDA approval on the algorithms and AI technology if you are building software as a medical device. So that is going to take a lot of time, but once you get there, it makes your company highly defensible. And this is the very case of VideaHealth, which was ahead of the curve as an AI native company that has been in existence for over 6.5 years and has crossed over the hurdles of the FDA approval process. Fast forward to today, VideaHealth has scaled to over 40,000 dental clinicians using their platform every day for identifying and treating dental conditions, and the company is also processing over 500 million x-rays a year. VideaHealth recently announced a $40 million Series B round of funding. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics like AI and healthcare and its adoption, Florian's background story, and why he made the transition from medicine to becoming a tech entrepreneur, the full story of VideaHealth, and why the dental industry was perfect for building an AI company, getting started by going door to door to dental practices to understand their challenges, how their platform provides a significant ROI, raising capital and the company's go-to-market strategy, hiring and the importance of talent density, and so much more. Okay, quick side note. It's hard to believe that we have over 350 episodes of the VentureFizz podcast. We have built up an amazing catalog of inspirational stories around building companies, and every episode includes lots of great advice to follow as well. If you haven't checked out our past interviews, go to venturefizz.com/podcast for the complete list. Oh, and one ask, please share the VentureFizz podcast with your friends and colleagues in the industry. I appreciate all of your support. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Florian. Florian, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Oh, I'm excited to talk to you because we've done a small little piece of content for VentureFizz in the past, talked about your company and kind of where it was at. I'm excited about this conversation because this is more to your background story, obviously a lot more about your company, which you just announced a new round of funding. So we're going to talk about that and growth plans. But to kick things off, so when I think of VideaHealth, it's an AI native company that's been in development for a while. It's not like all of a sudden you saw this trend and was like, oh, that's a good use case. This is something you've been working on for a while. So I wanted to talk about kind of, the healthcare industry as a whole and how AI is being applied, and is it seeing the adoption that hopefully, the use case for AI in healthcare is extraordinary. So what are you seeing out there?
The adoption of AI in healthcare is a very, very interesting trend right now. So before I worked in dental AI and founded my own company, I actually worked in AI radiology, like chest x-rays, brain cancer, you name it. And I think that adoption, while it was one of the first use cases, right? Like there was a New York Times article 10 years ago, that adoption took quite some time. And I think the technology was maybe not quite there yet, where it gave the extra confidence to the user. I think then some of the business models didn't work out yet, and people have not understood, and there was no infrastructure for fast distribution. Most of the data was on-premise and not on the cloud, etc. And I think what has happened in the last few years is that the technology makes rapid progress. The accessibility to data is much faster, and distribution is by the move to the cloud is going much, much faster. And so what we've been seeing is I think the first 3-4 years of our company, where it was really an R&D company because we had to go through FDA clearances, etc. We had maybe 50 to 100 dentists using our platform. And now within the last 2 years and something, we scaled that to have over 40,000 dental clinicians using our platform every day.
Wow.
And
40,000.
Yeah, and we are processing over 500 million dental x-rays per year, etc. And so if you see the adoption curve, it truly is it's actually beyond exponential, which is pretty phenomenal. And actually, the fun thing in dental is what's happening right now is dental is overtaking radiology healthcare in terms of adoption and so on. So that's super exciting as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of pieces which come together. I think also greater education and awareness around AI. people experiencing ChatGPT and realizing, wait, it's actually helpful and I can still be an author, but it just helps me. I think that's all of that comes together right now in a very interesting moment.
Yeah, no, I'm just so excited about the future with the combination of AI and healthcare and the types of products you're building and others in pathology. It's hopefully going to be, saving lives. So, all right, well, let's talk about your background story. So where'd you grow up? What were you like as a kid?
Well, you maybe hear this. I have a slight accent. So I'm originally from Germany, Berlin. And grew up in a household with doctors. My parents are both doctors, cardiologists and nephrologists. And I always fell in love with healthcare because I felt that almost immediately it has a purpose. It has like a very clear purpose and it's very measurable. Like when you help a patient, you know it and it's gratifying, right? So I always liked that. And actually that drove me towards studying medicine for many, many years. So I, for many years, studied actually medicine and I wanted to become a neurosurgeon and I did a bunch of internships and all of that stuff. And then just a few years before graduating, I actually dropped out of medical school to found my first business, which was Ninu, which was a digital pregnancy platform. To be honest with you, ahead of the time, I think whoever listens to us right now found this now. Like I actually think it's a really, really great market. But I did that because I love healthcare, but if you're a doctor, evidence-based medicine means essentially you're doing every day what has been done 10,000 times before because that's the evidence. And that's great for some people. And for me, I really, really love to do things differently. And so it's probably not great if I'm a neurosurgeon and improvise in a surgery, right? So I felt like, okay, wait, actually, entrepreneurship is the much, much better spot for me. And totally fell in love with this. I mean, I had small stints at McKinsey and other like consultancies, etc., which is also great. But like entrepreneurship, where you constantly understand and learn, and then identify ways of how you can do something differently and create new disruptive value. Absolutely fell in love with that. Did it first in Germany, a beautiful country, but also not as fast as I needed to be. And so that's why I came to US and was working, I think I was 2013 or something, 2013. I was working at EchoHealth, which is still a San Francisco company that does a AI-powered stethoscope to analyze heart sounds and predict heart diseases. And so I think that was over 10 years ago. And that was for me my ChatGPT moment. Up until this point, I had no clue what AI is. Back then, we just called it big data science, you name regression. And since then, I was like all obsessed about AI. I had no clue about it really because I studied medicine and business, and some electrical engineering. But then I really wanted to get good at this. I applied to MIT. Fortunately, got in and then studied computer science, which was like intense 2 years. And then really got into radiology and AI and all of that. And then honestly, I ended up in dentistry because when I left, I know this is like a personal story from my family here right now, but like when I left med school, you can imagine like a German family, they are doctors, you are supposed to become a doctor, they're super proud. So when I left medicine, I calculated that as a neurosurgeon, you roughly like treat 200,000 patients in your tenure. And so I was telling my parents, we have this internal joke in our WhatsApp group of like, I hope I will have even a bigger impact if I leave. And so what was always my guiding principle, and funny enough now of this company as well, is we want to have a true, measurable, positive impact in the world and on people's lives. And the nice thing about dentistry is that everyone goes to the dentist. And if you measure the impact by sheer number of people we diagnose, so we diagnose right now, 35, 40 million patients per year, right? And we know from our FDA studies, roughly, that every second patient we diagnose and support the clinician, right? Like we support the clinician diagnosing and treatment planning, they get a cheaper, easier, and less invasive treatment than if they wouldn't have used AI. So if we do 40 million patients per year, we calculate and we call it even an employee impact score at our company. The people we have in the company right now help 20 million people. And so that's how we think about it.
That is extraordinary.
Yeah, right. We have a dashboard in our office in Boston where you like every second we see how many patients are diagnosed and treatment planned, and that's just incredibly rewarding, and it's probably anchored by my bet with my parents when I left med school. Yeah, exactly. So
When
it cost to 200,000, I texted them to them immediately. So
absolutely, it's bragging rights. Okay, so what I realized about your background is you've always been entrepreneurial. Like, you did make that transition from being a surgeon to entrepreneurship and having that app that you created. Plus, you're also, evaluating startups in Munich for a 100K competition, kind of like the MIT 100K. So
right.
It seems like this was ingrained for you to do this anyways. So, like, how did you get started with VideaHealth? Like, how did the idea come to fruition and even like start building it?
Yeah. I always say, and it's a little bit theatrical, but like I always say, like I'm made for this company because like I'm a half clinician. Like I unfortunately never graduated, but like I've spent a lot of time at school. I understand a little bit computer science and understand a little bit business, so it's a nice trifecta. When I was in Boston in grad school, I definitely knew I want to found again a company. It was just very clear to me that that's the I tried consulting, I tried research, I tried medicine, and that was all not my way. So I knew that, and I knew it should be in healthcare, given what I just said, is like, I think it's very purpose-driven. And then I was really thinking, like, where can it actually have a positive impact? And to be quite honest, there are amazing healthcare companies out there. That said, 80% of them, and that's super good for them, but 80% of them, they're kind of in a backend of a backend, and they result that insurance companies make more money. Like they optimize fraud, waste, and abuse, they do this and that, but there are actually very few healthcare companies and even fewer healthcare AI companies where I feel it has like a true positive, measurable impact on people's lives. And so when I went through all the verticals, and actually funny enough, I really went through all the verticals. Like I did dermatology AI, I looked at radiology, I looked at biology, ophthalmology, you name it. I felt dentistry was by far the most interesting, and I still think that 6 years in, and we can have this interview in 2, 4, and 6 years, and I will still think that. And the reason is it has the most amount of data, it has the most amount of patient visits. Again, as I mentioned, everyone goes to the dentist, and you go to the dentist regularly. Like you go regularly for cosmetic reasons. That's not the case with a cardiologist, fortunately, or chest X-rays. And then, so quantity-wise, it's by far the largest. And then quality-wise is actually also huge, because if you look at all the research studies, and I actually published papers on some pieces of that, or a paper on that, a radiologist is really good already, and AI helps them, no doubt. But I think the combination of an AI and a dentist really leads to one of the biggest outcome improvements across all healthcare. So there's like really a huge upside to using and leveraging AI in dentistry, even more so than in radiology, which makes sense because a dentist is everything. A dentist is a radiologist, a primary care physician, a surgeon, and a businessman, whereas a radiologist is just a radiologist or mainly a radiologist. And so quantity-wise, dentistry is exciting. Quality-wise, dentistry is super exciting. And then last piece of like business-wise, dentistry is super exciting. It's a huge market. The users and the customers are amazing because dentists are business people themselves. Like I literally feel like I'm talking to other entrepreneurs because they're thinking, how can I improve my marketing of the practice? How can I do this? So you have like very like-minded clinical focused customers, and it's super fun. And it's a growing market. It's rapidly adopting AI. So there are a lot of reasons why dentistry is an amazing market, and that's why I founded VideaHealth. Yeah.
The other thing I learned was the importance of oral health. Other than going every 6 months to get my teeth cleaned and looked at by the dentist, that early detection of other diseases happen through dentistry.
Yeah, and look, there's a very famous paper. I think it's called something along the lines. I think in the Lancet it was also, but it's something called around the line like oral health and systemic health. Systemic, like the entire body. It's a two-way street, and what it means by that is that we all become more aware of what we eat actually matters. And what's happening is that your teeth, you have here a very thick cardiovascular system, and so these arteries are directly connected and very shortly connected to your heart, and to your systemic health system. And so there's a lot of evidence that shows that, for instance, negative periodontitis, gum disease, when your gums are recessing, if you don't have, if you don't floss and all of that, that this bacteria very easily can attack the heart and leads to hypertension and diabetes, etc. So hypertension, diabetes, and there's some preliminary research on Alzheimer. So all these big chronic diseases are, to some extent, not just correlate, but also caused by oral health. And quite honestly, it's so cheap to take care of your oral health, and it has a huge impact on your systemic health. So it's upstream of health risk, and so that's super exciting too, right?
So you see this market opportunity within dental care. How did you get started from there? Like, how did you build a platform, get early adopters, talk to potential customers, like early financing?
How do you do it, right? I mean, the most important thing, and probably every one of your listeners knows that, but financing and all of that is a means to an end. What really matters is like understand the problem, then see the solution, and then you take care of the rest, right? And then team, and then financing probably. And so, academically, I knew that there's a huge opportunity because we knew that I played with this around of building algorithms, and it became quickly evident that AI can help dentists pretty well of like not missing anything or just being faster and all of that. But what I really did is that I went to almost every dentist in Boston and Cambridge. Like for some reason, I still have like a lot of friends and contacts. They're still like my go-to group. And I went with them, and I had no money. I printed out a HIPAA agreement, I remember, in the internet. And then I asked the MIT lawyer if that's fine and all of that. I remember that too. And then I walked into these offices and told them, hey, this is what I'm doing. Could you help me? Can I get your data? And in return, you would be the first beta customer and whatnot. And that's how I got first data. Then, we built an MVP, and that's how I got feedback. And that's how we understood a lot of how we should design the software to make it easy in the workflow. And honestly, I think that led me to my first MVP and then a pilot. And based on the pilot where we had them testing it and they could give us qualitative feedback and we estimated what the ROI would be, so the financial return and all that. With that, I raised a little bit angel money. And then with that, I hired my first 5 people. And then the MVP went into a first bad product, to be honest with you. But that got us, our first contract. And then with that, we raised our Series A, and then, and then it went all from there.
This is what entrepreneurs need to hear, right? Like you had this idea and you went door to door talking to customers to get that, proof point, the data to start to build what ultimately has now, raised a Series B round of funding. And that's just pure desire and hustle, right? It's that this is a problem that I'm going to go solve. And if I was an investor, just looking at your history and that tenacity as a founder, like it would be like, there's no way this person's going to fail. So I would absolutely I wish I was a venture capitalist because I would have funded you first. So
yeah, you know me for some time. Like you've actually seen our stories. So, yeah. So I mean, I'm obviously super passionate about innovation and understanding pain points, and I think like now is more than ever an incredibly exciting time to start your own companies or B, join companies. Because besides, and we can have a discussion around that, maybe besides fundamental models, which might become from incumbents, I think a lot of the application layer will really come from startups, and so it's a super exciting time. I often coached other startups and whatnot, and I think the most important thing, nonetheless, is that you actually understand the problems and you're not putting AI first. I think that's the key point of it. Right. I think sometimes we are all, including ourselves, actually, we are marketing AI too much, and it's all about what are the actual problems and how can you solve those. And that's number one. Number two, then what team do I need? And then what funding do I need? Because I felt like in the COVID area, everyone was just raising a shit ton of money. But then afterwards, try to figure out what to do with this. And I think you need to really take a first principle approach of problem, solution, team. And then what do I need? And that informs anything else. And so we've been doing this pretty rigorously. And I sound like a hypocrite because we just raised $40 million, but we feel like we have number 1, number 2, and number 3 in place to now raise $40 million to power that, if that makes sense.
It totally. I mean, and you have customers, right? Revenue. You've got proof points. You've got a team. the 40 million is to, okay, it's go time. It's we're going to accelerate the growth of this business, not, hey, we're trying to figure out product market fit and build tech. And yeah, there's a lot of companies that are unfortunately feeling the pain of raising during that time frame, and maybe they're generating some revenue and enough to maybe keep their operations going, but they're not growing where the investors are going to do the next round of funding. So it's a problem right now. Now, we talked about dentistry, right? So the dental practice, it's entrepreneurship. And I don't know if people realize this, because the dentist that comes and sees you is doing the diagnosis of what's going on after reading the x-ray. They're performing the procedure if there's something that needs to be done. They're primary care, and they're a business owner. So they're actually running an operation and have office space and equipment and all these things. So the error rate is actually high for reading an x-ray based on those old school black and white x-rays, right?
Yes.
So what does VideaHealth do to help dental practices perform better?
Yeah. I think you teed this up, and what you said is absolutely correct. Again, a dentist, it's a phenomenal industry. Like I was in many, many industries before, and I love dentistry because the dentist is what you said. They are like four things at the same time, which makes them actually very business savvy, but also clinically, obviously that's their expertise. And then they are interested in a bunch of other stuff. And what's happening right now without VideaAI, and VideaAI is our AI platform, is that the dentist has like 30 seconds time to read through all your 18 x-rays. Like an FMX is like 18 different x-rays. You probably have been there, Keith, that they like take all these x-rays. They come in, they have like 30 seconds to diagnose it. And they are like back to back to back. Because actually what people don't know is like, the hygienist has 1 hour appointments when you go, but like the dentist actually just has like 5 to 10 minutes for you. So it's like really, it is a stressful job in many, many regards, to be honest. And so they have 30 seconds to diagnose, and then they need to explain to you, the patient, or me, everyone here is a patient, why this gray blob on this x-ray is a $2,000 crown. And I think the challenge with this is that in a hectic day, everyone misses something. Like you just don't have the time to go through every x-ray and change the gray scales and so on. And problem B, and that's even the bigger problem, is that dentists more often than not, or patients are very suspicious. Do I really need that? Is that really a crown? It's just not transparent at all. And it's really hard. And you've been there, right? Like this is the gray blob and that's $2,000. So in dentistry, more than in almost any other industry we know of, you have a high rate of people getting second opinions. They say, okay, that's great. And then they're like scheduling somewhere else. And then they take the dentist who says, you don't need anything. But that's not necessarily true. So that's the status quo right now. And you can see this now into burnout of clinicians. Right now, you have like a huge lack of talent. And then also you have one of the lowest case acceptance rates in dentistry, meaning that, for instance, for 100 crown recommendations, only 35 of them will be accepted by the patient, which is crazy. It's like one of the lowest in all healthcare.
Shocking.
Yeah, because people just like, they wait. And the problem is that it gets worse and worse. And then instead of a filling for $200, they will get a crown for $2,000. Instead of a crown for $2,000, they will extract your teeth. That's if you wait and if you delay necessary treatment, it gets worse every time you eat and so on. So that's the status quo. And so what VideaAI does is every time you go to a dentist and the hygienist or assistant takes the x-rays, it sources into our AI platform. We automatically diagnose or propose diagnostic and treatment planning. We show, first of all, to the clinicians, so the hygienists and dentists, we show them all the disease the AI has identified. And the AI has been trained by hundreds of dentists and has been FDA approved, so it's very accurate. And so it shows it to the dentist, so the dentist can focus on the different areas. And then number two, and even more important piece, it shows it also to the patient. So it measures exactly like, hey, the cavity or decay is already into your pulp, what's called in a tooth, and you actually need to treat that because otherwise it gets just worse. And we can actually, with imaging AI, with generative AI and so on, can make that very intuitive, digestible, and explainable to the dentist. And so dentists who use our platform first and foremost, they have a much higher case acceptance rate, meaning that patients do not delay necessary treatment. And that's great for everyone. That's why I'm so excited about our company, is because it's a win-win across the board. It's a win for the dentist because he makes more revenue, but more important, he takes care of his patients. And it's also relevant for the patient because a patient gets now a $200 filling and it takes an hour versus like, getting a $2,000 crown. So that's what we are doing right now. And now we've raised 40 million, and honestly, we are pretty deep into this already. Essentially the next step of video, I always call it Act 1 and now Act 2. And I mentioned earlier, like, what are we doing? Act 2 now, and that's why we raised the 40 million, is to essentially now give more time back to the clinician. They spent a large amount of their time in the office, in the back end, in the back room, writing notes, doing this, doing that. No one enjoys it. And the problem is also there's no clinical context. And so we are about to automate almost all administrative, tedious, and error-prone tasks there are in a dental office. And we're super excited about that.
Wow, that's quite the expansion. So
yeah,
it's going to be it's going to be a full-on platform.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're hearing about AI right now in the news, let that be from a Bridge, Schiff is a great guy, or let that be from even from OpenAI, or let that be from Harvey Legal. It doesn't matter. Like, everything which is an AI right now applies to our company, and that's so exciting. You know what I mean? Like, we are so on at the edge of what technology can do right now in a very meaningful and purposeful market. And that makes this exciting and fun.
Well, and your company's defensible too because of the FDA clearance, where I didn't realize the FDA needs to also approve algorithms and the AI before you can roll this out, which makes sense. I just didn't really put that together.
No, you're right. And I think that's the big difference. You said this right at the beginning once to me, that this is a company which has been 5-6 years in the making and now goes through the roof. And because we actually developed deep technology for 3-4 years, like, right? FDA clinical studies, we are a software as a medical device. And so that's actually amazing because it gives us defensibility across any of these hundreds and thousands of Gen AI companies nowadays, which I'm meaning respectfully, but like, I think the verdict is still out, like, how sustainable these companies are, while also we benefit from all the new AI developments.
All right. So how did you ultimately roll this? I mean, your go-to-market strategy, like, was it more of the partnerships model, direct sales? Like, how did you scale to the degree you're at now?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I think for us, our market, I think our market is split in two categories, high level. On the one side, we have dental chains. So in Boston, there's, for instance, 42 North or Gentle Dental. Maybe you've seen that. That's a customer of ours, amazing company. So these chains, they have like 10 to over 1,000 dental offices. And what these chains say is like, hey, let us take care of the financing and all the non-clinical time piece so you can focus on the clinical piece. And then the other piece of the market are single offices, like your mom and pop shop, like the dental offices. And so what we do is, like, we work directly with all these, with what is called DSOs, dental service organizations, so the chains. And so we have a direct sales force for those, and that is part of our core customer base, and it's going really well. We won and we are rolled out in the number one in the United States, Heartland Dental, with over 1,700 dental locations. We are in the number one in Canada with over 600 locations, Dental Corp. And so that gives us obviously also scale, and we can work very strategically together with those partners. And then at the same time, we have a great partnership with Henry Schein, which is a distributor, and they also own what is kind of the electronic health record in dentistry, Dentrix called, which, by the way, every of your listener, every second office they go to, they have that software. And we have a partnership with them where our AI is exclusively in all these locations already. So what we did is we have a great distribution partnership for all the single offices, and then we also directly work on those chains.
All right. So with this new round of funding, I expect you're going to be doing some hiring. So what functional areas are going to be growing, and what's it like working at VideaHealth?
Yeah, two questions. Like TLDR, we hire across the board. Like literally, I don't think there's any position we are not hiring right now. In terms of domain, we are primarily focused on new products, product engineering, and AI talent on the one side, because we are innovating quite heavily. But then also like scale of go-to-market, right? Like more sales reps, more marketing, more customer success, etc. So really across the board, which is mainly focused on, driving our core clinical AI, so to say, but then also continue to innovate. So it's a very interesting, like we have very great product market fit and product market scale and sales fit on our core. And so we accelerate that core plus we innovate. And that's like the two-prong approach here. And so it's a very, very exciting time to join because, it's like proven customer, proven revenue, all of that. And now we are very innovative. How it is to work at Vidya? We have like 5 values and I can elaborate on them probably for like an hour. But high level, it's like customer obsession, which is the dental clinician on the floor. Bias for action, speed, extreme ownership, growth mindset, and one team. And so, and then we have like, for what do these 5 mean? That means, for instance, if you can, as an individual, do a decision and it's a double-sided door, you just do the decision yourself, and so on, right? Like, so we have like certain cultural guidelines behind those. I think what it really is on a high-level narrative to work here is I think you are part of an incredibly mission-driven team. I think everyone at this company, they all could have done this interview. I think everyone in my company could have said why they joined, what we do, and why we do it. So you are joining an incredibly mission-driven team. I think you are coming here to make a career. So we do work hard, but we also reward a lot. Like it's really about innovating and moving the needle, right? So we do have, so to say, a high-performance culture. And we really try to have an incredibly high talent density. And I had one of our most senior engineers who has like 20 years of experience in amazing companies before, came to me at our Christmas party. We do like a lot of team events and stuff, and came to me that this is the place he never worked with as great other engineers or colleagues in general ever before at Vidya. And I think that is key, is what really matters to me, because if going back to this, like if you have the right team, everything else will fall in place. And so, I think incredibly talented people, incredibly motivated people, and it's really a camaraderie. Like we help each other and we grow together. That's I think what everyone in the company would describe ourselves as.
So what have been kind of like the biggest lessons learned upon building this company?
And this is actually, I should have anticipated a question like that, and I actually should. We are running so quickly that I probably should take like a vacation and actually think about distilling this down, because there's so many lessons. I think like just on a piece of hiring, I think like I think talent density really, really matters in terms of like just having great people, because it has virtual cycles. Like half of our hiring is internal referrals, because people refer others to bring them into the company. And so great people attract great people, motivated people, kind people, nice people, collaborative people, and so on. So I think talent density matters, and you get talent density by having an incredibly transparent leadership style and always explain the why behind things and so on. So I think like that's one of those things. So in doubt, hire slower. And for instance, we have a pretty rigorous interview process. We probably interview for each position, 30, 40 people or so. So it's quite extensive, but it's worthwhile. I think that's number one. I think number two is priorities matter. I think we're pretty good at that now. I think maybe 3-4 years ago we were not. And priorities, everyone says that, but what I instilled in this company is priorities is about what you do not do. So it's not about like what you do, because the problem is then you default into needing to evaluate, like you default to just doing too much. It's like all about deliberately deciding what you're not doing, and literally put that off and give a clear rationale, and then not rethink about this again too much. I think those are two major lessons learned, and I think the third thing is like be customer obsessed. And again, everyone says that. You can read it probably on every blog post. And by the way, I think there are 3 types of companies. They're customer obsessed, they're investor obsessed, and they're team obsessed, so to say. And I think customer obsessed, especially in our market, is so valuable. So I personally probably go, every second week or so, like to a random dentist who uses our AI and ask if I can observe how they use it. I'm trying to at least. I think everyone in our company, like they get a stipend. We have a Google map with all the thousands of offices where our AI is installed, and they get a stipend to go there instead of their other dentists. And most dentists at this point have ours, but to experience it ourselves. And so just being super close to the customer and being very clear who the customer is, I think is incredibly valuable for how you're innovating, especially in the age of AI, where you can do a lot of cool demos very quickly. But if it's not integrated into the workflow, especially in healthcare, or if it doesn't really address the problem, right, it just won't lead anywhere.
What about raising follow-on funding? That, we kind of talked about that earlier. Can be tricky for companies. Like, what was your process? Were you keeping, a whole like roster of investors updated on your company and milestones? Like some founders do a newsletter. Like, what was your method of raising that follow-on capital?
Yeah, maybe unconventional. I don't know. I don't spend much time on fundraising, and I never want to. Meaning that, quite honestly, when I fundraise intense. But when I don't fundraise, I'm not really meeting investors at all. And the reason is that the best thing to fundraise is just to execute. So if yes, you can build great relationships and so on. And don't get me wrong, you should do that. So I'm like, take it with a grain of salt. But most important is that you just execute. And you have the right metrics, you do the right product, you have the right team in place. And that's what outside of fundraising, that's what I want to obsess about. That's it. Team, product, sales, all of that. And now when it comes to fundraising, we were in a lucky spot in a sense that, sometimes competition is bad, sometimes competition is great. And I think it's very evident that AI is happening in dentistry. Like, it's very clear that in the next 2-3 years, 80% of dentists will use AI. So that's a huge, rapid growing market. And I think there was a lot of interest in this market. And so we always had a lot of investors who like following the market, who actually sent me proactively like market analysis and ideas and all of that. So the market was happening, and we made a name for ourselves because like we established ourselves like kind of in a leader in the top segment. Like, top segment means like these chains, like we have the number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. And that's why we had a lot of interest in general. And so what I do is like maybe once a year, if I don't fundraise, I have one day where I meet every investor who I have, like, literally it's a crazy day. I meet like 20 investors back to back to get to know them. And that's how you start then building a relationship, right? And then when you fundraise, I think you should just do it intense and time bound so you can go back to building. I think it's more important to do fundraise quick and intense and move on than drag it out for several months and be distracted at the end of the day. You want to go back to building as fast as possible. And yeah, exactly. And like, look, I think we have a lot of optionality and flexibility in terms of where we are financially and then also how much we've raised. But if we raise again, so to say, then I think we would do it the same way.
And so did you already have kind of like a short list of these are the investors that are very interested in my space, and this is going to be a conversation that they already identify with, and assuming that the metrics line up, it should be a very...
yes and no. I think so did I have a list of investors who were interested in? I had probably I definitely did. So I had a list of investors who were interested in, who either I met even in our Series A, who I met through events and whatnot. Like, you should always, as a founder, if a founder listens, you should always have a rolling list of investors who are interested in your space. And then I also, a ton of my friends are other CEO founders. Like, really, I know probably 30% of Boston CEO founders are somehow like colleagues, and I know them. And so I'm also asking them who are their best investors, because I think this blind, so for instance, I do a lot, on this round now, I did a minimum of 5 blind references on the different term sheets. And the reason why is because in the process, you need to understand the investors, not in the good times and the fundraising times. You need to understand the investors. What is if you have a disagreement strategically and all of that? And you only get that through founder blind references. So I think I had and still have that, right? I have a list of investors who are interested in the space or understand the space. And then I have a list of investors who I'm interested in from references. And fortunately, there was a pretty big overlap. So I could just take the intersection of such. And then with those, I was building a relationship. I kept them updated, but quite honestly, not in a newsletter or anything like that. I think this is a great idea, but I'm going back towards it will take me probably nonetheless an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, I don't know, to actually craft a good message. And I would much rather spend these 2 hours to craft a great message as a customer or something like that. So I'm I don't know, I'm pretty protective at that time. And yeah.
That's great feedback. Yeah, there's definitely different ways. And I think entrepreneurs need to hear different experiences. So,
Right.
there's, different scenarios. One size doesn't fit all, but I think
It
it's
totally
helpful
does.
for.
And Keith, like, I don't know, I feel like so passionate about it because like I work with also so many founders. Everything is different. You're absolutely right. Like, so there's no advice whatsoever. There's a dogmatic general rule. It's always first principle, right? So for instance, for us, we are not like, a double-sided platform like Uber versus Lyft, where I do believe when you were Uber and Lyft, you needed to raise a shit ton of money and deploy it fast because it's B2B2C or B2C. And so there, it does matter that you get like network effects in ASAP. For us, it's very important to scale fast. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like the one with the most money. It doesn't matter if you have the most money as long as you have enough money, so to say here. And so that's why it's not as relevant as in other markets and all of that. I do believe though that sometimes in the COVID era, when was it? 2020, 2021, right? I think a lot of startups did over-raise, and I think they are now because it's fun. Like it gives you a quick adrenaline, but the problem is raising is not success. Customers, adoption, team, that's success. And I think that's nonetheless what as much as I love fundraising, like you have to remind yourself of that.
All right, 3 apps you can't live without. Can't be Slack, can't be your calendar or Gmail or whatever email you use.
It's by far number one is Spotify. Like, I think they did such a great job against Apple Music. I think they do such a great job with deploying AI in an actually meaningful way. Spotify is definitely number one. And then number 2 is travel apps. Funny enough, but like, I'm traveling a lot. Probably 30% of the time I'm on the road. And I think that's number 2. And funny enough, number 3 is the camera. And just because like let it be with a team, with my company team, personally, whatever. I actually don't love photography at all. Like, I'm just not a patient enough person to find the perfect picture. But so I'm not actually photographing a lot, but I do love to just do memory snippets. Like, we are all on a journey, and sometimes we need to force ourselves to enjoy the journey rather than always strive for the outcome. Those are my 3 apps. And quite honestly, Keith, beyond that and Gmail and Slack, I'm not using and WhatsApp. Maybe WhatsApp because I have a lot of European friends. I don't use any apps. I'm not on social media. I'm actually trying to stay away from all of that. From a podcast, funny enough, the podcast is a very dynamic place, right? There was like a lot of all in. Now it's I think BC2 or BG2. I think 20VC from Harry Stabbing is a very good one. In particular when he interviews operators who are still operating. Like they don't have the investor bias and they don't have the hindsight bias, but who are like right now in the trenches. Those I think are by far the most interesting conversations. And then a book, there are tons of great books, but I think you have to read them at the right time. For instance, I read The Hard Things About Hard Things. Like, everyone rages about it and it's super smart, but I read it way too early and I couldn't relate to all of those things. Now I'm like, okay, it really, really makes sense, right? But I never had to fire a friend, fortunately, right? Like, now I had to. And anyway, so you need to read them at the right book. Depending where you are at in your founder journey, I think if you're early, I would almost recommend to everyone, and I actually do recommend this for every early stage founder, is called The CEO Within. It's actually free on Google. It's from it's from a prominent CEO coach who was a coach from the Twitter founder and Sam Altman and all of that. And what I love about it, and I would really recommend everyone reading it, it's just very tactical, clear advice and not like hindsight bias, where it's like a book like, tell me how awesome I am. But it's actually like, hey, this is hard and this is how you do it.
Great recommendation. I haven't heard that one yet. All right, what do you do for fun outside of work when you have time?
Reading The CEO Within and listening to 20VC. No, to be quite honest, it's funny. Before VideaHealth, I had like a bunch of hobbies, and I don't really have hobbies anymore. Because like I enjoy the work. It's like also my hobby, but so I'm not really thinking about this so much split. But I do love to spend just time with friends. Like, I'm trying every week, and I have to do that. Is I'm literally trying to block my calendar to do something with friends where we talk about other things than work or AI or business or something like that. So I think meeting friends, as lame as it sounds, but I feel like in person, right, and have actual conversations. That's number one. And number two is a ton of sports. You probably had this. It just, I in the beginning I did it for fun, then I did it for health. Now I just do it because, it's just the way how I operate. But yeah, squash, gym, whatever it might be. And then the third thing is definitely traveling. Like as much as I can outside of work and all of that, I really love traveling, and it's really humbling if you are like in the Alps and you hike, or you are at the ocean and nature. Like nature is so much bigger than us. And sometimes you take yourself too self-important. You're running a company and so on. And it's just, I think, for everyone. Also, some of the big guys out there, they should spend more time in nature. I think it would be good.
Well, Florian, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through your background story. Obviously, all the great work that you and the team are up to at VideaHealth, and obviously all the great advice.
Thank you, Keith. It was, as always, super fun, and I'm looking forward to talk again in a couple of years and see where we are there. Thank you.